I run this school, man.
No teacher can teach them. No parent can reach them.
I am the future. I am the future. I am the future.
If they are the future, who will stop them? Class of 1984, rated R.
In a world where podcasts reign supreme, two friends dare to ask, do you even movie? Hosted by filmmaker Henrique Couto and movie aficionado David D. Neuer. Spoiler alert.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Do You Even Movie? I'm, of course, your host, Henrique Couto, here with my good buddy and co-host, Double D, David Louis Denoyer.
Greetings.
And we are celebrating a kind of sort of back-to-school month.
It's gotten a little mismatch, but, you know, the last two kind of fit it.
Well, I mean, for the record, why break precedent from the Martin Mull dedications?
Yeah, exactly.
Where one of them, he didn't speak.
Didn't speak at all.
But we are here today. We're going to be talking about a film that should really give you all those warm and fuzzies about high school, if you're me.
Yeah.
And just make you go, if you're Dave. So I made a funny face.
He did.
It's important to make a funny face. And I also want to say a humongous thank you to everybody who reached out about my birthday, especially because last week's show aired on my birthday.
Yes, it did.
It was very nice. Also very bizarre because we recorded that one a bit ahead.
We did.
So I had to be like birthday boy for a day.
Yeah.
And then back to normal for 11 days.
Yep.
And then back to it. I also want to say a big thank you to my buddy Dave for arranging all of my friends to come together and buy me a spa day.
You have a spa day, yes.
I don't even know exactly what that means.
You're going to have one before I've ever had one. I just know what they entail for the most part, and I also read the description of multiple packages to figure out which one was perfect for you.
Oh, so you were like, okay, so mani-pedi all in, stone massage, Terminator 2 appreciation stretches, and you're like, that's the one, baby.
I'm so proud of that card. If you only knew the struggle that stupid card was.
He made me a Terminator 2 card, and instead of it, there's the old Mexican guy at the end of Terminator 1,
Terminator 1,
telling Sarah Connor there's a store, but your birthdays are coming. And then on the other side is just her going, I know.
Pretty solid.
Nah, it was I know on the front, and on the back was just the storm.
The storm, yeah.
No, that was really, it was awesome. I appreciate it. It has been a trying year.
Yeah.
I got very, very real on the birthday show, which has only gotten wonderful response. I think one of my favorites was our friend Maurice wrote in and said, I totally knew it was going to be Puppet Master 4. All those wrong guesses I made, that was just to not show off.
Well, I loved Patrick. Patrick even said that he thought it was going to be a Puppet Master movie, but he didn't know which one. And I was like, that's a pretty good guess, I gotta say.
Now, people now know my relation to Puppet Master 4.
Yeah.
And by the way, Puppet Master, while it's not our biggest performer on YouTube as an episode, got a lot of response because I was right. 90s kids.
Oh, yeah.
I
have to check that out.
Love Puppet Master. Just, comments like, I remember renting it. I remember looking for it. I remember this and that.
Yeah.
And I blew one of our listeners' minds because I mentioned that I still have my blood-splattered Blade doll.
Yep.
So, and at the end of the show, I will be reading some emails which are in reference, at least to some extent, of my day of birth.
Yes.
But that all being said, I'm doing well. It was a good birthday during a hard year. You guys really, the friends out there, the listeners out there, you guys really stepped up for me. And I can't say thank you enough. I had this sounds so stupid, especially because I'm like 38. I'm knocking on the 40 door. But I had kind of accepted that this coming birthday was going to not be so great simply because of circumstances.
Yeah.
Losing my dogs, all that. I don't want to do the whole world's tiniest violin, but
I get you.
But a lot of things, and also unbeknownst to everybody listening, I had a horrible experience with one of my ADHD medicines.
You did?
It made me sick as a dog.
Yes.
And then I had no ADHD medicine.
You did not.
And it it felt like flowers for Algernon.
It did.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, you said it. I'm just going,
you're like,
just going along with it.
You were absolutely a mentally challenged man once you stopped taking it.
I'm just going along with what you've reiterated several times.
After a lifetime of being misdiagnosed as having anxiety and depression, and every anxiety and depression medication or therapy, not really doing much. The medicines would just either make me tired or not do anything.
Yeah.
And one of the problems was I was exhausted all the time. And now that I'm being treated for ADHD and I'm trying different medications to find which one's the exact perfect one for me, it really, when I stopped taking it, it really did feel like flowers for Algernon. All of a sudden I was like, okay, back to that brain. And the little rat just looks at me and squeaks. Yeah. And then the credits roll as I'm trying to learn to spell my name on a chalkboard.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I told my mom that comparison.
I know you did.
And she was like, what's Flowers for Algernon? So I told her, if you don't know out there what Flowers for Algernon is, it's one of the saddest. It was originally a short story that it became a novel.
Yeah.
I found that I didn't know about the short story.
Yeah, and then it became a TV movie under the title
Charlie, which they showed us in middle school.
Yeah.
And it's good. But there's an entire psychedelic freakout part.
There is.
That kind of doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
I mean, it does for when it was made, but I really loved the story of it. I haven't seen the other version. I am going to check it out. That's from 2000.
Yeah, 2000. I didn't even know about that one, actually.
Yeah, there's another one out there, but it's about very short version. It's about a mentally challenged person who finds out he can get a surgery. I'm like cutting out all of the interesting stuff and just like, he can get a surgery that would make him smarter. He gets the surgery, becomes smarter. I'm sorry if I spoil it. You had from 1940 to read it.
They spoiled Flowers for Algernon, did they?
But in the story, he becomes so smart.
Yeah.
He becomes so intelligent that he starts leading the research on the surgery he had. And then he's the first one to discover that the effects are not permanent.
Yeah.
So he discovers that he's about to become caged in his own mind again. I think in the book, Charlie had a 74 IQ.
74 IQ, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. And it's one of two books that I read that they made me read in school.
I can't remember if we read it.
I loved, and it really clicked with me. Yeah. The other one was Inherit the Wind.
Inherit the Wind, yeah. I can't remember if we read that in freshman year or sophomore year, but I know we read it in my high school English class.
It was either 8th or 9th grade for me. Okay. I'm having trouble remembering exactly. No, it was 8th because I remember my 9th grade teacher. But anyway, this is a good segue, but I want to mention that when I told Mom the story of Flowers for Algernon, she just went, that's terrible. That is a horrible way to feel. You don't really feel that way, do you? And I was like, no, I don't. I'll just eat my sushi.
Yeah. There you go.
Love you, Mama. Oh, man. You should have seen the seafood boil. I
saw your bib, and that made me jealous enough.
I ate 1.5 pounds of seafood.
God damn right you did.
The best part is I ordered calamari in there. I got crab's legs, and I got lobster, lobster tail, and I got calamari.
Hell yeah.
Well, they didn't have calamari at the place I went to the last time, so this is my first time getting it there, and it was straight up little squids. It wasn't like diced up or anything. Yeah. Well, it's not the most appetizing thing to look at. But at first when I looked at it, I was like, woof, I'll try it, I guess. I took one bite. It was the most tender calamari I've ever tasted.
Yeah.
And then I just sat there eating those while my mom was just like, how do you, well, she's eating her shrimp. She's like, what are you? And I'm like, you made me on this day. So anyway, but no, very good birthday. And yeah, so speaking of school, we have one of the ultimate feel-good coming-of-age high school dramas.
Boy, do we.
And it's a little film by the name of Class of 1984, ironically, in 1982.
1982, that is correct.
And this is one that I've always enjoyed.
Yeah.
But another one of those, I know when you first watched it, you had a very different experience than me.
Absolutely.
But when I first watched it, I thought, damn, pretty good. And then when I revisited it, like at 26, 27, or whatever we watched it.
So we watched it. We watched it with one of our Easter marathon themes. We had Class of 1984 in there for I think the theme was survival that year.
Oh, okay.
And then Joe Bob showed it.
Yes, which was awesome. Yeah. Awesome to have it on the last drive-in. But but I've grown to appreciate it immensely as time goes on. So I mean, I think that's about enough ado.
Okay, well then let's get into it then.
I did notice that on a couple on our it was on our Mr. Mom episode on YouTube. Somebody commented and just said here's the timestamp for when they start talking about the movie. It was 21 minutes, and I was like, I'm not even mad. Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair.
Yeah. So David,
Let's do it.
Give us the deets.
So, class of 1984 from 1982, 1 hour and 38 minutes, rated R, and our director and one of the writers on the film is Mark L. Lester. Now, you may know that name, but you may not know why. Well, I'm going to tell you why. So we start with 71. His first directorial was Twilight of the Mayas. He goes to do Steel Arena, which he's the writer, director, and producer on in 73. Truck Stop Woman in 74, which he is also writer, director, and producer on. White House Madness in 75. Stunts in 77. Gold of the Amazon in 79. Roller Boogie in 79.
God damn right.
Class of 1984 in 82, which he is the screenplay on, has the screenplay on as well as directs. Then he goes to shoot Firestarter in 84. Commando in 85.
Wait, he did Firestarter with...
Yeah.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
wow.
he does Firestarter in 84, Commando in 85, Armed and Dangerous in 86, Class of 1999 in 1990, he gets a story credit on. Showdown in Little Tokyo in 91, he's the director and producer on. Extreme Justice in 1993.
Yes, I'm a very big lover of Mark Lester. I'm Facebook friends with him.
That's awesome. Followed by...
He's still active.
Oh, I'm sure
to
he is.
this day, very active in the film business.
Hell yeah. Followed by, in 1995, he does a little film called Night of the Running Man.
God, two of my favorite underappreciated 90s action movies are Mark Lester's.
Yes, they are. Then he goes to do Public Enemies in 1996, The X in 96, Double Take in 97, The Base in 99, Hitman's Run in 99. Remember that terrible Eric Roberts movie we watched?
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It was not. I don't really remember much about it.
Sometimes I think, when I think back to that movie, I think that they had, like, after the slate of movies they had produced were done, they were like, all right, we got like $105,000 left. And I found this script under a sandwich in my office.
Yep, that sounds about right.
So let's go for it. It's still fun, but it's
fine.
It's all of the problems a cheap action movie has. Yeah. That movie is the example.
Yeah. Blowback in 2000, Sacrifice in 2000, Guilty as Charged in 2000, Stealing Candy, he is writer, director, and producer on in 2003, Pterodactyl in 2005, Groupie in 2010, Poseidon Rex in 2013. One thing I did want to point out, though, that I found going through his resume, executive producer on Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse in 81.
Yes, he produced a lot of stuff, a lot of interesting stuff. I believe, I don't quote me on this 100%, but I believe at some point he was in some way, he was hooked up initially with Trimark, Vidmark Trimark, and then I think he ended up kind of parlaying that into working with Cinetel on a ton of action movies as well, which is why he just keeps working and working and working.
Yeah. So moving on down to our writer, we have the infamous Tom Holland. No, not that Tom Holland.
No, the Spider-Man Tom Holland.
So I mostly focus on his writing credits for this one because his writing resume is really impressive.
Well, he started as a writer. Yeah. You guys may know him as the director of Child's Play and
Fright
many
Night.
other fun ones. Fright Night, yeah.
So he gets his start in 78 writing the story for The Initiation of Sarah.
The TV movie, which is super worth watching.
Then he does The Beast Within screenplay in 1982, which was based off a novel.
Yeah, I remember it being a book first.
Yeah. Then he does Class of 1984 and 82. He does the story credit for that. Psycho 2 in 83. Cloak and Dagger in 84. Scream for Help in 84.
Which, thank you so much to my friend Shannon. I'm so sorry,
that
Shannon.
Movie is...
Shannon got me the blue for my birthday.
If you have not seen Scream for Help, the opening line is basically the main character saying that she's afraid that her stepfather's going to kill her. And then we just go into a wild fucking
we watched that together, and our jaws were like on the floor half the film.
You think you know what the movie's going to be, and then I think at the halfway point, it turns into a home invasion, then it turns into an erotic thriller.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Nuts. So, Scream for Help in 84. Then he directs and has a writing credit on Fright Night in 85, Fright Night 2 in 88. He gets a character credit for Child's Play in 88. He gets directing on Tales from the Crypt episode in 1990, The Langoliers in 95. He has the teleplay for Thinner in 96. He does the screenplay for The Initiation of Sarah remake in 06. He gets story credit for Fright Night remake in 2001 or 2011. He gets credit for as story and characters. And then Tom Holland's Twisted Tales in 2014, Child's Play remake 2019. Because he gets a based on credit for his work.
And Tom Holland, he's been he's definitely gotten more appreciation now.
Yeah,
he's kind of an unsung hero.
Yeah.
But there are two kinds of people in this world.
Go on.
There are people who love Psycho 2, and there are people who lie.
That's fair.
So I challenge you, find a sequel that far out from the original, with none of the original writers or directors involved.
Yeah.
That is that solid.
I'll go on bat and say I think Psycho 1, 2, 3, and 4 are a lot of fun. I think 3 is probably the weakest of the series.
Wrong.
What?
No, you're right.
Okay.
But I love it though.
Because I think 4 gets a lot of hate that is not deserved at all.
Well, first of all, poor Mickey Garris.
Yeah.
No, but no, first of all, it was a made for Showtime sequel. So that's going to get it some hate because you're talking about the fourth sequel to one of the most iconic horror films of all time.
Yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Perhaps you've heard of it. But the reason I jokingly said like, no, you're wrong about 3 is because 2 like really does a great job of kind of updating everything.
Yeah.
It's not exactly like Hitchcock would have done it. The character is very honest. It's very much a perfect sequel.
Yeah.
3 is when they're like, all right, now it's time to have some fun with Norman.
Yeah, now it's just straight up slasher.
Well, it's not just a straight up slasher. It's like a friggin' late 80s as sin slasher, and in the best way.
Yeah.
So, but I think that, I mean, Mick Garris's Psycho 4 is another one that has really gained appreciation as time has gone on.
Yeah.
But that initially a lot of people didn't love it. So when I was a young man, that was on cable a lot. Well, because it was a cable movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't know which Psycho it was.
Fair.
I just knew it was a continuation of Psycho.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time when I was very young where I thought that was part 2.
Oh,
because because the other ones were not constantly on the air anymore.
That makes sense.
So I have a very soft spot for Psycho 4.
I mean, I do understand going back to Mickey Garris. He has talked about it on his podcast, and he did say that like the biggest issue he had was getting close with Tony Perkins, basically, because he was supposed to direct it, and then he got the job.
Because he directed the third one.
Yeah.
So they'd promised him the fourth one.
Yeah.
And then fired him, but not as the star.
No.
There are a few stories like that.
It's not great.
Fred Ray's finishing directing Zombie Death House. Yeah, because the director was John Saxon.
Yeah.
And then John Saxon got fired as the director, but was still the star of the film.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Zombie Death House. I forgot about Zombie Death House.
I mean, a lot of people did.
Yeah, that's fair. Moving on to our final writer, we have John C.W. Saxton. He gets his writing credit in 73 with Across This Land with Stompin' Tom Connors. Then he has Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS in 75. He's the writer on.
Really?
Yes. Blackout in 78. Followed by The Great Detective in 79, Title Shot in 79. Then in 81, he does a little movie called Happy Birthday to Me. Yeah, he's one of the writers on Happy Birthday.
That's one of those movies that really, that and April Fool's Day, they really scratch that post Friday the 13th, but not Friday the 13th itch.
No. And then he finishes off from his career, what I could see, with class of 1984 and 82. Moving on down to our cinematographer, we have Albert J. Dunk. He gets his start as an assistant camera and camera operator in 1970 with Dr. Frankenstein on Campus. Never heard of it, but I love that title.
Not familiar, but now I want to know.
Caged Men in 71, Across the Land with Stompin' Tom Connors in 73, Black Christmas in 74, and it just so happens in Black Christmas he plays a character by the name of Billy.
He's the voice of Billy?
Is
he the voice as
Billy,
well?
Yeah.
He is the voice?
Yes.
So he's the voice on that weird commentary track they did.
So
That's great.
Billy from Black Christmas shot class of 1984.
Did he shoot Black Christmas?
No.
Well,
wait, no, he totally he did assistant camera on.
Oh, assistant. Well,
yeah.
Well, and it totally makes sense. Canada, class of 1984,
Canada, Black Christmas.
So he would have been in that circle of like people you'd bring on. But that I would love to hear the story of how it was like. So I'm assistant cameraing, and Bob Clark walks by, drinking a hot toddy, and goes, "Wow, you sound like a pervert."
So he does Black Christmas in 74, followed by Police Surgeon in 75.
Police Surgeon?
Police Surgeon.
What?
Breaking Point in 76, Meatballs in 79, If You Could See What I Hear in 82, and Mick Garris' Sleepwalkers in 92. That's when he's doing assistant camera and camera operator. He doesn't become a DP until 79 with Klondike Fever. Then he shoots Hank Williams, The Show He Never Gave in 1980, Cagney and Lacey in 81, The Incubus in 81, which gets him the job for class of 1984.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that happens in 82, followed by High Point in 82, Perry Mason Returns in 85, Fight for Life, not Fight for Your Life, Fight for Life.
Oh, I was excited for a second there.
in 87, followed by Murphy's Law in 88. Not that Murphy's Law. It's a TV
I was
show.
excited again.
I know.
there.
Passion in Paradise in 89, Rich Men's Single Woman in 1990, Murder Time 7 in 1990, I Still Dream of Jeannie in 91, Moment of Truth, Broken Pledges in 94, Flashfire, Forever Night, A Walton Easter, My Date with the President's Daughter in 1998, the Disney movie. Did you ever see that?
No.
Oh, God. So it has a theme song that's like, My Date with the President's Daughter.
Well, that would make sense.
Play through the movie, and that's
It'd be weird if it had a song that was just like Superman 2, Superman 2.
Superman for the quest for peace. Followed by The Inspectors in 1998, Traitors in 98, Family of Cops 3 Under Suspicion in 2000.
Finally, some cinema. For those who don't know,
God.
that was Charlie Bronson's last big
His
series.
retirement series.
Yeah, was
basically.
it a TV movie
TV
series?
movie, yeah. There's like 4 of them.
They're very they're all right. They're very talky. They're family friendly.
They've been described to me as Hallmark cop films.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun enough. I mean, if you're like, you know, on a couch and you've decided that, if you're on, I was about to say, and the power went out, but then how would you watch a movie? If you're on a couch and you have to eat ice cream before it melts,
Yeah.
put on those movies
Family
and
Cops.
just on the couch on a Sunday afternoon.
So then he does the Happy Face Murders in 1999, which I want to stop for a second. So you know I'm a huge Lifetime fiend, basically.
I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, crazy, right? I mean, I've always been one since my mom was watching it growing up. But anyway.
Yeah, you're not supposed to admit to that.
That's fine.
I was doing the same thing.
But so I about a year ago I recorded the Happy Face Murder that Lifetime did with David Arquette.
Oh, okay.
This ties back into Class of 1984 real quick, because right when he becomes a serial killer in that movie, when he does his first murder, they decided to put No More Mr. Nice Guy as the soundtrack. Of course, not Alice Cooper's version. It's a cover, but still.
Oh, so it's good.
Fuck you.
Dave's mad. Dave's
So
mad.
Happy Face Murders in 1999. Then he does Must Be Santa in 99 as well. The Inspectors 2, A Shred of Evidence 2000. Mail to the Chief in 2000, which I love that title.
Mail to the Chief.
Disney Channel movies. This dude made a killing.
Okay.
Because then he does The Pooch and the Pauper in 2000. The Paradise Virus in 2003. I don't think that's a...
It sounds fun and light.
One Last Dance 2003. Street Time. Anonymous Rex in 2004.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Yeah,
2004.
the Angry Video Game Nerd did a whole thing about that
Yes,
movie.
he did. Then he does Like Mike 2, Street Ball in 2006.
Okay.
He shoots The Kill Point in 2007. And then in 2009, Dr. Dolittle, $1 Million Mutts. Didn't even know that existed.
What a career, though. I mean, for
What a
real, though.
career.
Like,
Yeah.
to be working all that time and to do such a varied amount of work and to not have a shortage of work for quite a while.
And to be Billy in Black fucking Christmas.
I mean, I'm sure that was at the top of his resume.
Oh, I'm sure it was. So moving down to our IMDb synopsis, we have a new teacher at a troubled inner city high school ends up clashing with a delinquent punk posse who run the institute with an iron fist.
I mean, that sounds right.
My synopsis. When Andrew Norris comes to Lincoln High as a new teacher, he is quick to find out that the school is ran by a charismatic and psychotic Peter Stegman and his gang of crazed followers whom he wages war with.
A little wordy, but good.
Yeah, not bad.
A little. I think you didn't need the names.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah,
But that was good. That was a good one. That was no applause this time.
Yeah, fair. That's
Because
fair.
I couldn't find it in time. But
So moving down to our cast, we have Perry King, who plays Andrew Norris in this film. 103 credits on his resume, by the way.
holy crap.
He gets a start in 1972 with Slaughterhouse 5. The Possession of Joel Delaney in 72. A very weird horror. Possession of Joel Delaney. I probably put the two together.
It's okay, Davey. I just for a second I was like, I honestly I was like, which word is? I mean, like, is there a different word than possession, or is he trying to say possession?
Yeah, Possession of Joel Delaney. That was a movie that I became aware of because I've talked about it. I think on the show before about that horror book that we had at junior high that had a bunch of like older movies in it that I looked through, and that was one that was mentioned. So for years I had tried to track it down, and right when I got into Facebook horror groups with like trading media and movies and whatnot, somebody had it and I got it. Weird fucking movie. Very weird fucking movie.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah. Medical Center in 73, Lords of Flatbush in 74, Hawaii Five-0 in 74, The Wild Party, Mandingo, Lipstick in 76, Bad in 77, The Choir Boys in 77, A Different Story in 78, Search and Destroy, The Cracker Factory in 79.
I've not seen that one.
I have not even heard of that one. City in Fear in 1980, Golden Gate in 81, Star Wars original radio drama. He's the voice of Han Solo on all the original Star Wars radio dramas.
I did not even know there were Star Wars.
I didn't either, but yeah, he literally is in A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi as the voice of Han Solo. Then he does Class of 1984 and 82, The Clairvoyant in 82, Helen Keller, The Miracle Continues in 84, Riptide in 84.
They did a sequel to Helen Keller.
They did.
God loves show business.
Easy Street in 87, Perfect People in 88, Shakedown on Sunset Strip in 88, The Hitchhiker series in 89, Only One Survived in 1990, Switch, Jimmy Smits in 1991.
I love that movie.
So good. Cry in the Night in 92, A Tales from the Crypt episode in 93, Outer Limits 95. Most recently, and by I say most recently, in the last 10 years, he was on Will and Grace and, or 20 years, I guess. Will and Grace and Spin City are like two of his bigger
getting
ones.
old, huh?
Yeah. Shut up. Moving down the list, we have Timothy Van Patten, who plays Peter Stegman in the film. He started on 8 is Enough in 1978, 3-2-1 Contact in 80, Insight in 81, The White Shadow in 81, High Powder in 82, Class of 1984 in 82, California Cowboys in 83, The Master in 84, St. Elsewhere, Zone Troopers, Night Heat, The Wrong Guys, Catacombs, True Blue in 1989. He also became a director in the 90s with Home Fries in 92, The Visitor in 98, The Sentinel in 96, NY Undercover in 97, Homicide, Life on the Street in 95, Now and Again in 99, Touched by an Angel 2000, Ed, Keen Eddie, Sex and the City episodes of 2003, The Wire, Deadwood, Into the West, Rome, The Sopranos, The Pacific, Game of Thrones, Boardwalk Empire, Black Mirror, Perry Mason, Masters of the Air, and even Franklin in 2024.
I like how you were like, and then he moves into directing, and then you're like, I was in the 90s. I'm expecting like, so he did a couple. No, he's become like he's very sought after major director in television.
Television, especially, yeah. And then going down to wrap us up is Roddy McDowall, who we talked about, of course, on our Dead of Winter episode, just to give you some highlights of his career, because everybody knows Roddy McDowall by this point.
They should.
Planet of the Apes in 68, Bedknobs and Broomsticks 79, Poseidon Adventure 72, The Legend of Hell House 73, Arnold 73, The Black Hole, Class of 1984, Fright Night in 85, Dead of Winter in 87, Overboard 87, Fright Night Part 2, Cutting Class, and Shockma.
I still think
Jesus,
if you would just listen to me, I could help you find the love of your life.
I am not getting a Shockma tattoo. It's not happening.
Let's let the audience in on this. I want to see what you guys think. So here's my theory, everybody. David, his luck with women, mileage varies. Let's say it that way. That's the way I'll say it.
Yeah, I bet it will.
So I told Dave, hey, we both...
Stop for a second. You told me this like 7-8 years ago. Like, this has been early in our friendship about the Shockma tattoo.
Little has changed.
Yes. So, continue. Continue.
So, I like how we've been friends so long. Dave's like, oh, you're going to hang me? Here's some more rope.
Yeah, basically.
So, Shockma is this awesomely weird, bizarre, kind of bad movie about a killer baboon.
Yes. During a game of D&D.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good, you guys. If you haven't seen Shockma, see it. But, and it's cursed by the terrible title Shockma, which most people don't know is a type of baboon.
Nope.
So, I tell David, well, you like Shockma. Shockma's a cool movie that a lot of people don't know. Get a Shockma tattoo somewhere on your body, not like on your face or something, but you know, a tattoo. And then when you're out and about in life just doing your thing, if you run into a woman who goes, oh my God, I love your Shockma tattoo. Da, 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 da,
I kind of want to get like a Vidmark tattoo now. Vidmark or Trimark. I think that would be the way to...
You should get a Vidmark tattoo and then have that crossed out and then Trimark put under it, like, and then crossed out and then Artisan. And then crossed
just have
out
the line go down.
It just keeps going.
God, we're such fucking nerds.
I'm aware.
So as of this recording, Class of 1984 is available on AMC Plus, Freevee, Peacock, Plex, Pluto, and Prime.
It's very easy to get a hold of and absolutely worth your time.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
So what was your first time watching Class of 1984?
So there was a video store here in Dayton right when I turned 18 called Precinct 13 Video. And they had a ton of movies to rent, and the owner was a big cinemaphile. So I would go in and I wouldn't know what to rent. I'd rent everything I had wanted to see. So I would just start taking recommendations from the owner.
Yeah.
And one night he recommended Class of 1984. He said it was like one of the ultimate 1980s movies. So I took it home. I was aghast by how violent and mean-spirited it is. And I thought it was fine. But then years later, when we revisited it, I could not believe how much I loved it, how great the performances are, and just how ballsy of a concept it was. Although I think that, and I'll talk about this more later, I think that the concept isn't that surprising when you look at what the 1970s were like, especially in America. And I think a lot of it kind of rings true in a bizarre way.
There might be some trivia with that towards the end.
Oh. Well, hell's bells and taco shells. But what about you, Double D? Tell us all about how you watched it wrong the first time.
So I found out about this movie simply because I got really big into Shout's Scream Factory line when I was working at FYE, because that was really about the time that they launched it, and also the time I got into Blu-rays, which would have been circa 2000. What, it would have been 2012 or 13, I think. And I found out about this movie just because of that cover they released, and I was like, this looks awesome. So I obtained a copy of it, and I watched it, and I was not into it. I don't know what it was. Like, it was fine. I was excited to watch it. I think I even posted on Facebook about it, because not even like a day later, my buddy Austin called me and he's like, "What'd you think of that movie?" Because like, if it's good, I'm gonna check it out. And I was like, it's okay. Like, it's got some crazy moments. And I started describing it to him. And I remember I got to the point of McDowall's car crash, and he's like, "Honestly, David, like, this sounds fucking awesome." Like,
why are you saying it's okay?
I don't know. Like, it sounds like you actually liked it, but you just don't want to admit it. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, maybe I just need to watch it again. Fast forward about a year or so later, I in a trade, I ended up getting Class 1984 Blu-ray with, I think it was Darkman and Crawl Space. So I got those three together in one trade, which was awesome. And I watched it again, and I was just like, yeah, I'm a fucking idiot. This movie rules. Also, it opens with an Alice Cooper song, so the fact that I didn't like it even more so then made me upset.
Well, I do have a theory.
Okay.
As to why you didn't like it.
Yeah.
The only, having known you for over a decade.
Yeah.
Been good friends for over a decade, or just about a decade, whatever.
Yeah.
I think you had diarrhea that day.
It's possible.
Just based on like how I know you, and I know
the amount of movies in our friendship that that I've come around on that you were just like, I think you were just wrong, and here's why. We're gonna watch it again.
Yeah. It's funny because like when it's a movie that's like very arguably good, I'll be like, fuck you, you don't even know. But when it's like when you say that about a movie, I'm like, no, it's just a really good movie, Dave. I think we need to rewatch it.
Yeah.
That was one of them. But I don't know. I mean, I've watched movies in the wrong mindset, in the wrong mood as well.
I don't know if I was just expecting something different, or if it was so fucking crazy it almost shell shocked me. Like, I have no idea. But yeah, now I absolutely fucking love this movie.
Angry Bowels.
Angry Bowels sounds correct. So you ready to get into the movie?
Hell yeah.
So we open with some on-screen text that says, last year there were 280,000 incidents of violence by students against teacher and their classmates in American high schools. Unfortunately, this film is based on true events. Fortunately, very few schools are Lincoln High yet.
Are Lincoln High
yet.
Yeah. Hey, this film is a cautionary tale.
Yeah. That it is. So we open with Alice Cooper's song, I Am the Future, as we see Lincoln High from an exterior perspective, as we see the students going into the school. We meet Andrew Norris, played by Perry King, who is driving to the school for his first day, and he arrives in the parking lot, and he meets Terry Corrigan, played by Roddy McDowall, and he notices one thing immediately about McDowall, and that would be that he has a gun in his briefcase that he's taking into the school.
Yep, he has a pistola.
He has a pistol, and we also, during the opening credits, we see that the school has graffiti all over in the inside of it.
And we're talking like if it were any more graffiti, it'd be wallpaper.
Yeah.
It's nonstop graffiti, and some of the funniest graffiti I've ever seen, because it's meant to be awful
and shocking.
And so, do you have any trivia about the swastikas?
Yeah, I have who created them, yes.
Because one of the things that I noticed immediately, because these kids are supposed to be pretty friggin' bad.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain something that is kind of controversial, but it is worth mentioning.
Yeah.
In this film, some of the kids wear swastikas.
Yeah.
The bad kids, obviously. If it were the good kids, I'd be like, Dave, what are you bringing me this for? What's wrong with you? No.
Fair.
Class of Triumph of the Will.
God.
But Hitler Youth of the 1984. But they're wearing swastikas. they never have any scenes that suggest they are neo-Nazis.
No.
There's never any like racially charged scenes or anything like that.
There's one Sig Heil, yeah.
I mean, they could be, but the movie never depicts it.
No.
Well, in that era, well, more so in the 60s and 70s, but in the 80s too, punks started wearing swastikas.
Yep.
Similarly to how bikers wore swastikas.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that if you wore a swastika back then, you weren't a neo-Nazi. I'm not trying to say that. But the swastika was a big deal for shock value.
Oh, yeah.
So punks and bikers and people like that, if they wanted to just scare squares, they would wear swastikas, because you also have to keep in mind, while they, especially in like middle America in that era, how often would you meet like a Jewish person?
Yeah.
Almost never. But you know who you would meet? World War II veterans who would get very mad that you're wearing that. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't people who were ideologically Nazis.
Yeah.
But I got the vibe that these kids were just pieces of shit and they were trying to get everybody mad.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring up the swastikas is in particular because the swastikas of their clothes are correct, but the swastikas on the sets are weird.
They're weird.
And I started coining the term that they were Canadian swastikas, slightly more polite swastikas, if you will.
Yeah.
Their edges are rounded, but they're still the same. I don't know why, but that just made, I always like, because every scene I'm like, wow, there are no like traditional swastikas on the walls.
Well, and also around this time in horror literature, especially, literature may not be the right word. I mean, horror novels in particular around this time, splatterpunk stuff use swastika on the covers a lot.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that I did not know, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, well, and so all this to say, swastika. I said it so many times this episode. We're completely demonetized.
Yeah.
So,
So he sees that Terry Corrigan has a gun in his briefcase. He asks him why, and he's like, he's like, I guess you haven't taught here before. Like, where have you taught before? And he's like, this. And he's like, oh, so not here, and just takes his briefcase and starts walking.
Yeah. So we're already having another picture painted
that
other than the graffiti.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, during the credits, you see that the school is graffitied inside. There's metal detectors. There's students that are being shaken down. I mean, it's not a good environment by any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, maybe to you.
So that's when they go into the school, and that's when Corrigan is walking along with Norris, and Norris notices the metal detectors, and he's like, well, why do they have those? And again, he's like, you have no idea about the school. Like, this is much needed. And he's like, oh, by the way, like, do you know any defense, like kung fu or anything like that? He's like, no, but I can swing a mean baton. And Roddy McDowall was just like, whatever, dude.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah. So Norris even notices that a kid gets a straight razor through the metal detector as he's walking away. He tells security, and the guy's like, he's already through. I can't really do anything. He's already inside the school. Can't do anything.
Sorry.
So that's when he meets the principal, Principal Morgenthau, and we see that Morgenthau has just a base of monitors in his office. There's cameras all throughout the school. He notices two kids smoking pot, so he sends security after them, and he's going basically down the rigmarole with Norris about what the duty is, where his class is, where his students are, and he also tells him that in his off periods he is to patrol the halls. And he's like, well, isn't that what security's for? And he's like, oh, we already have enough of a teacher pay into that. Like, teachers have to do their part too.
Yeah. We can't afford any more security.
Yeah.
We're paying teachers, so they got to earn their cash.
So new teacher to patrol the halls first day.
Yeah. And it should be mentioned, they don't just have security, they have armed security.
Armed security.
Which is extremely uncommon in any school.
If you've ever seen The Substitute with Tom Berenger, this school is even worse than that school.
Oh, this school is like if the school in...
You see the Class of Nukem High thing.
Well, I'll get to that. But this movie's school is like if the school in The Substitute were on crystal meth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
So he is the new music teacher at the school, and he goes into his classroom, and we quickly see that he's got some rowdy students in the class, and it just so happens to be Peter Stegman and his gang.
Those boys don't appreciate a good performance.
They do not indeed. They're harassing the students. He goes in and he's like, he sits down at his desk and he doesn't know exactly how to deal with it. And then one of the students, Deneen, walks up to him and she's like, hey, I know you're new. I just want you to know, like, those guys do not belong in here. Like, they're not on the roster. So he starts calling attendance. One of Stegman's gang is like, not here, not here, not here, being a complete asshole. And that's when basically Norris intervenes and he tells Stegman, if you're in the class, are you in this class? Stegman doesn't want to be a part of the class, even though he's in the class, so he goes to leave and takes his cronies with him, but not before they have a nice Sig Heil to everybody.
Which, I mean, is just etiquette.
Etiquette, indeed. So Norris introduces himself to Deneen and Arthur. Arthur, of course, played by a very, very young Michael J. Fox.
Well, for the record, a very young Michael J. Fox was like the first 20 years of his career.
Yeah,
man.
this is 1 year before Back to the Future as well.
Yeah, he's looking super young.
Yeah. So Deneen also decides to lead the class into a piece to show off their skills for Norris, and he's pretty impressed so far. After class, we see Stegman and his gang wandering the halls while Barnyard is holding a wad of cash, and they're commenting on their quote is low. They don't know what's up, and that's when they notice that Leroy, one of the kids in the school, is also dealing in their hallway.
Ooh, on their turf.
On their turf. So they quickly ambush him. They throw him in the bathroom. They kick the shit out of him, and they tell him not to deal on their turf, and if he does, there's going to be consequences. Norris in the teacher's lounge is asking Corrigan about the last teacher that he's replacing, and that's when we find out that Corrigan lets him know that that teacher had an accident.
Yes. For those who are not watching, air quotes were used.
He fell down the stairs.
Ah, yes, a tale as old as time.
Or at least that's what they told us.
Yeah.
So Norris finds his car has also been graffitied after work with teacher sucks on it. Teacher spelled with 2 E's.
Well, I mean, in a way, they're making a better point than they may realize.
And no one at all is surprised, so he just gets into his car and drives home. He returns home, and his wife is working on the nursery. He reminds her, the baby's not due for another 6 months, and she's like, I just want to get a start on it. How was work? And he's like, it's going to be a challenge.
And our immediate thoughts are, he has a kid on the way, and he's very hopeful. This is going to go great for him.
Gonna go great for him.
Yeah.
So later, Stegman and his gang meet up with Leroy's gang, and they get into a giant brawl, and they end up kicking the shit out of the other gang and walk away. Later that night, they also confront Norris while they're in costume. They go to his house as him and his wife are walking down the sidewalk. They're in their costumes. He comes up to the car, and he's like, what do you guys want? They come into view, spray him with a squirt gun that's full of stage blood.
Yeah, it's really kind of bizarre and upsetting.
Yeah. Especially
because stage blood would not feel good in your eyes.
No.
Yeah, they just, and his face is just drenched in blood. Woof. Yeah.
So he and his wife return inside while Stegman and his gang head downtown for a punk show. They get into the punk spirit and they're thrown around the crowd. But then we also find out that Stegman runs his office out of this place in the back.
Of course he does. Because, a guy's got to have an office, especially when you see the place he lives in. I mean, he's got to have a place to go to do his business.
Yeah. So that's when a new woman comes in and she says she wants to get a job from him. She also wants to get a bump of coke. So he gives her a bump, tells her to take her clothes off in front of his gang. And she asks him, do I get the job? And he's like, well, there's actually a tryout. And he has Fallon take her in the back and try her out. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything.
I wouldn't either.
No, but it's a great scene to establish that his crew are all just sick enablers.
Yeah.
Because actually the idea of her taking off all of her clothes was the girl in the group.
Yeah,
I forget
Patsy.
her, Patsy.
Yeah.
It was her idea.
Yeah.
She's just a pure sadist.
Oh, yeah.
In the worst kind of way.
So the next morning at school, we see Arthur and Jimmy, his friend, putting up the American flag onto the pole. Maybe that'll come back soon.
I doubt it.
Yeah, we'll see. Norris asks his class about putting together an orchestra for a city symphony. The kids are into it. They love the idea. And he even has the class practice on an overture, but we see Stegman leering outside the door before his gang walks in behind him. Stegman goes over to the piano, but Norris quickly tells him he doesn't want him in his class. I'll give you the full credit, but just please don't come to my class. You're not welcome here.
And he says he'll mark him present every day if he's not there.
And that's when Stegman sits down at the piano and blasts a couple keys on it first, and Norris isn't impressed. He starts walking over, and that's when Stegman goes into a beautiful piece on the piano.
He basically plays a sonata.
Yeah.
Or sonata, or however you want to say it.
Sonata, I think.
Well, I mean, it depends on the language you want to say it in.
No, it's sonata.
Okay, fair. But no, he plays like a beautiful classical piece of music.
Yeah.
And when he's done, I just love that when he's done, he's like, so am I in the band or whatever? And he just goes, no.
No, when you grow up, maybe. I'll
and
give
I was
you a
just like,
test.
I just love that because it's like, nah, we know what you are.
Well, Norris is like, he's kind of blown away at first because he walks over and he's like, how'd you learn to play that? He's like, do I get the gig?
Yeah. And we find out why he knows how to play like that. Don't worry.
So he walks out stating he won't play any asshole band. Walking the halls in his off period, we see Norris is uneasy, and we cut to a bathroom where we see Arthur and Jimmy are actually buying angel dust off of Stegman's gang, and Jimmy is the only one trying it, though, and he's getting nose deep in that bag.
Well, I mean, what, you don't want to get home and realize it's oregano.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, because that's what looks like angel dust.
What it looks like.
Exactly, yeah.
So Stegman's gang, watching the door, warn him because they see Norris coming, so he runs in and tells him. Norris then confronts Stegman and his gang for dealing because he catches them right in the act, but they don't have anything on them. So he tells Stegman and his gang to empty their pockets. None of them have anything. So he walks into one of the stalls, nothing in the toilet, walking along the urinals, and what do you know? He finds a little white baggie in the urinal.
A little adorable baggie of PCP.
A little adorable baggie of PCP, indeed. And he asks Arthur, are you buying this? Arthur denies it, says he doesn't do that shit. So that's when he tells Stegman that he wants him to go to the principal's office, and he follows them out there. And that's when Stegman and his gang somehow persuade Morgenthau that the drugs are not theirs.
Yeah. It amazes me. One of the things that does drive me crazy in this movie, but I think it's on purpose, is that everyone acts like it's their first day.
Yeah.
Like the security guard's like, oh, it must be this straight-laced looking nerd kid. And it's like, oh yeah, it's not the gang that literally runs ruckshot over this entire school every day, terrorizing people and getting into fights and selling drugs.
And they make the note at one point that Stegman has been suspended so many times that they basically have a revolving door policy with him.
Because that's how you do that. Although we find out why.
Why? Yeah, exactly. So
there is a reason.
So that's when we see that Jimmy, the kid who took the PCP, is outside and he is out of his mind, and he starts climbing on the flagpole.
For the record, that is like in the manual when you take PCP is to climb a flagpole. The nearest flagpole.
Nearest flagpole.
What? You never read the book, did you? You were one of those edgelords. You're like, I don't need instructions. Snort.
So Principal Morgenthau releases the kids and he says, keep your nose clean. Like, don't come back here. And of course, Norris is just like, how the hell can you do this? Like the kids, like, how are you believing them? Like, it's clearly the drugs. And he's like, well, if we didn't see them, we want to pin the drugs on them. We want to see them in the act. So that's when attention is drawn outside as Jimmy has now reached the top of the flagpole. He is citing the Pledge of Allegiance as everybody starts coming outside and forming around, and that's when he plummets to his death.
Yeah, he does. And I guess this is, pre the era of zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, well, we want to catch him with it.
So he plummets to his death in front of everyone. Norris then questions Arthur about Jimmy buying the drugs. Arthur still states he knows nothing about it. And Stegman and his gang notice that Arthur is talking to Norris, but Corrigan pulls him aside and he's like, hey, how about we go for a drink? So Roddy McDowall and Perry King leave to go get a drink. Downtown, Deneen and Arthur are walking the streets when Stegman and his crew roll up in his car, and they immediately start ambushing them down an alley.
Who would have ever imagined that these kids would be trouble even out of school?
Yeah. So Barnyard and Fallon catch up to them both. Stegman confronts Arthur about talking to Norris and basically tells him, this is what happens to snitches, and they're holding a broken bottle on Deneen. Meanwhile, though, one of the guys watching for Stegman's gang is caught by Norris and Corrigan driving past because they see that something's going on, somebody's keeping watch. So they pull the car over, they go down the alley, and he basically tells them to let the kids go and drop this or else there's going to be problems. That's when they get into a little bit of a brawl. Norris gets a hit on the head, Corrigan's hand gets cut, and everybody breaks off and is gone.
Yeah, it's the way they depict the violence, especially early on, because the movie does get wild later on. Yes. But the way they depict the violence, like the fights between people and the way Roddy McDowall's hand gets cut and stuff is so realistic that it's very uncomfortable.
And quick.
That's what I mean, because that's how it really goes, is like a few things happen, and you're like, oh man, my hand is bleeding a lot. That's just the way that kind of thing actually goes down.
Yeah. So Corrigan says he doesn't want to go to the hospital. Just have him take him home. Norris also returns to his home, and his wife immediately, of course, notices his head wound, and she's like, "What is going on at that school?" And that's when he says, "A kid died today." And they cut the scene right there, which I always love that.
No, it's excellent because there's such a great punctuation to the hell that's happening and what is going to happen. But there is that weird thing where it's like, you have a kid coming. Are you really that passionate
about this?
Like, there are schools all over the world you could teach at, but you're going to stick it out with like the murderous gang.
Listen, they're only going to later that night drive up to Norris's house while him and his wife lay in bed, and Stegman's just going to break the window of his car. He's just going to light a Molotov cocktail and throw it right into the front seat of the car, blowing the car up. I don't see what the problem is.
No, a couple kids just relaxing, throwing a couple cocktails, That's what anybody does to blow steam off after a long day.
How in the hell does this not pick up bigger steam at this point, though?
Well, this is definitely one of the films, and there are many in this subgenre, do the police even exist?
Yeah.
There is reference to calling the police.
And we go to a police station a couple times.
Yeah, but we never really see cops doing cop stuff. Like, I don't know, arresting people or threatening arrest or anything. We really just hear this detective basically kind of bounce off of our hero of sorts.
His car is blown up. The next morning, Norris tells Diane that he wants her to pack up and go stay with her mother, but she tries to reason with him about finding a new job. Norris says he wants to stick this out. He has a lot of faith in these kids. So he decides to go to the police, who tell him since all of Stegman and his gang are under 18, there's really nothing they can do.
You know, when his car was on fire, you know what my first thought was?
What?
I just imagined him looking at the car burning, and then just J.K. Simmons walks up to him and goes, "It's covered. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two."
Class of 1984. God. So that's when she tries to reason with him, but he's like, no, I can stick this out. So he goes to the police, and since the kids are under 18, they can't do anything. So the next day, Norris and Corrigan are walking into the school. They're pulled aside by security, who tell them there's a problem in Corrigan's lab. And that's when we cut to Corrigan's lab, where we see that all his animals, his rabbits, everything have been slaughtered and put on display all throughout the lab.
It's heinous. It's heinous. It's really cruel.
Yeah.
They've just skinned all these animals that they were keeping in this lab.
Yeah.
And that's about when Corrigan, you can see him losing his grip.
Yeah.
He had in the other scenes, he had displayed sweaty palm.
Yeah.
Now the grip is slipping. It's slipping
just a little bit. So he sees all his animals slaughtered. He's immediately in horror, and he just goes out of the room. Norris immediately goes to confront Stegman, throwing him into the bathroom. He goes to throw a punch at him, but he can't bring himself to do it, and that's when Stegman just calls him out. He's like, I knew you couldn't do it. You can't do this. Then proceeds to throw his face into a mirror, bloodying his head. He puts his head into one of the hand dryers, the sink, and just breaks his lip a little bit. He's got blood coming down from his head and his mouth.
This is the scene when you realize what you're dealing with, what they're dealing with is worse than you would have guessed.
Yeah.
Because this kid is a full-blown
psychopath.
He's beating the hell out of himself.
He's pulling a liar, but it's not funny.
Yeah, well, that's a little funny.
I'm kicking my ass.
What
do
is
you
it?
mind?
Oh, yeah, do you mind? No, but this is the moment where you go, okay, this isn't about profit or power.
Mm-mm.
He's a psycho.
Norris is even taking this in. He's looking at this I can't believe this is happening in front of me. And then Stegman makes it even worse because with the blood that he's got pouring out of him, he puts some onto Norris's hand right on his fist, so it looks like he punched him. And of course, right at that moment, security walks in and Stegman's like, "Oh God, please don't hit me. Stop hitting me." And of course, the security's like, hey, you get away from that boy.
Again, because I guess it's that guy's first day.
Yeah.
This kid has no reputation.
Yep.
At all.
So we're in the principal's office now. Morgenthau is like, what the hell were you thinking? And, Norris is like, hey, Stegman did it to himself. And he's like, I have a hard time believing that. His mother's already ready to press charges. And also the detective's there now at this point. So they've got security, the detective, the principal, and Norris all in this office basically saying, what the hell did you do? You're in trouble with this now.
Yeah. What did you do, person with no history of violence or abuse? You are clearly the problem.
Yeah.
Ignore our hallways covered in swastikas.
My favorite line is Norris is like, well, what about, what about my story and everything? And security's like, well, when I walked in there, your fist was bloody.
Yeah, I got blood on your hands.
Yeah. So we cut to Stegman's house where his mother scolds him for
He really needed OJ's attorney.
He really did.
Get Shapiro and Cochran on the phone.
So we cut to Stegman's house, which, let's take a second. What does Stegman's house look like, Enrique?
Let me tell you something. They live in a fancy high-rise apartment building.
Yes, they do.
And he's laying on a couch with his little cut on his lip, and he's watching a TV set. And they have nice things everywhere, nice lamps, nice couches. And then we meet his mother, who is clearly wealthy, a single mother.
Yep.
And she is a lot like my mother in that my mother always took my side when the school had a problem with me, but I was doing things like wearing Halloween makeup to school.
I doubt you were pulling a class of 1984 most days.
No, I only got one detention my entire career in school.
Damn, beating me.
Yeah. Well, there was that other thing, but that was the mediation thing. That doesn't count as detention technically.
We've already talked about those.
But yeah. But no, I had one detention. It was actually for participating in a walkout. we were protesting mold in our school.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good time.
It sounds like it.
But no, she is completely on board. Her baby boy can do no wrong. He's a sweet young boy. I have a feeling she works so much she's not around him very much. That's a sense I get.
Well, she's even scolding him for 6 parking tickets, and he's like, oh, Mom.
Which is even funnier, too, because it's like, so he's committing petty crimes that you absolutely know are real.
Yep.
And you don't even care about parking tickets because you're wealthy. You don't give a shit. And now it makes sense like why he had piano lessons as a kid.
Yeah.
But that also makes him even scarier because, when there are delinquents and they're from poverty or they deal with a drunk parents or they deal with drug abuse or whatever, they lash out. Yeah. It's a thing you do. But even when you're overly spoiled but don't get enough attention, you might lash out some.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's no reason
for him to do it
other than not all his dogs are barking.
Mm-hmm.
He's a few cans short of a 6-pack.
Yeah. So he is watching TV. There's a knock at the door, and it turns out to be Norris, who is wanting to speak to his mother. And of course, Stegman just puts on an act like, "No, don't let him in, Mom. Like, don't let him in. Don't let him in."
I still think the move was to up his riz and just become the kid's stepdad.
Could have been the move indeed.
That would have been exactly how you handle that situation.
So that's when Norris is like, I have to speak to you, and she's like, I have nothing to say to you. Like, look what you've done to my poor boy, because he of course comes to the door, and he's like, still begging for him to not be let in, and
make him leave, Mommy.
Yeah, she basically tells him they have nothing to say, and that if he keeps harassing her son, that there is going to be charges pressed.
Yeah, and of course Norris doesn't help things by saying like it's going to be a lot worse than he's going to need something more than a therapist
if he comes around me again. She's like, oh, so you're threatening now.
Although when she says like he's going to have to see a therapist, and he goes, he doesn't need a therapist. I mean, like, yes, he does. Yes, he absolutely does. Court appointed, ideally.
So Norris leaves defeated, and that's when Stegman takes his opportunity to go to the speaker on the ground floor, and he calls to Norris saying, "Teacher, learn your lesson. Mommy doesn't like you very much. I don't like you very much. And if you ever come here again, I'll kill you. I am the future."
And there's something so mortifying because he's saying it through the call-up speaker on his fancy hotel or apartment.
Yeah.
So literally you're hearing it, it's all crackly and distorted, and he's saying it like just barely outside of earshot.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how ballsy he is. He's like, my mom might overhear a little bit. I'll smooth it over.
So Norris, being the genius that he is,
oh yes,
decides to go to the parking garage where he finds Stegman's car. He smashes the window, hot wires the car, and then proceeds to drive it into a column twice.
I love how he hits it into the column and just keeps the gas down. So bam, and then the wheels are spinning because he's like crunching it up against it.
He totals the car.
I do wonder, like, maybe there's a backstory we never got. Because why does he know how to hotwire a car?
Yeah. We don't really get much of his history at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So part of me wonders if maybe like something got cut about him growing up in a rough neighborhood or something.
Well could have been.
And you never know because it's a svelte movie.
Yeah,
it goes quick.
So Stegman goes to Norris's classroom the next day, and he's warning him like, you're through. Like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you for everything. Security enters, and then Stegman leaves. So that's when Detective Stewiski pulls Norris aside after class, telling him that there's that the trial that he's expecting is going to be delayed a bit. So then later in the cafeteria, drugstore, one of Stegman's guys starts a fight to basically create a distraction, while Stegman's guys, Vinny, walk up and stab Arthur, Michael J. Fox's character, sending him to the hospital with a ruptured kidney.
Yeah, they stick him like a pig.
Yeah, with a very, very sharp and long blade.
Yeah, and it's one of those squiggly blades. Yeah. I don't know the term.
I can't think of the name of it either.
But it causes more damage.
So Norris begs the detective to interfere some way, as this violence is only going to escalate. So the next day, we see Norris and Corrigan with their wives at the park having a picnic. Corrigan, unfortunately, though, taking it a little hard on the booze.
David.
What?
Be an adult. That's his medicine.
That's his medicine right now.
He's taking his medicine.
Because Norris even says, like, what are you doing? And that's when Corrigan's just like, oh my God, like, I'm a failure. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Norris is like, no, like, you're one of the best teachers in the school. Tries to talk him out of it. So the next day we see Norris conducting his orchestra. They're sounding great. He even stops and he's like, we're going to have this auditorium filled. And the people here, I think you guys sound terrific. And she's like, oh, you think we sound good? He's like, I didn't say good. I said terrific. Suddenly, though, that happy moment's cut short as security enters telling Norris that there's a situation. We cut to Corrigan's classroom where we see him teaching, except he is now teaching with Stegman and his gang, all at the desk and along with some other students, at gunpoint.
which honestly is a great way to get kids to pay attention. I mean, that'll beat Adderall any day.
Truly is, because Norris begs Morgenthau, Principal Morgenthau, for a chance to speak to Corrigan because he's ready to send the cops and like trying to get this completely taken out. And he's like, let me talk to him. So Norris enters and Corrigan's like, oh, well, you shouldn't be here. Like, I have a class. And by this point, McDowall has lost it.
No, he's not even home.
He's broken.
Yeah, he's completely snapped.
So we see that he is going up to most of Stegman's gang with a gun and asking them a question. And like he basically has his finger on the trigger as he's asking these questions.
Yeah.
And everybody gets it right except for Stegman, who looks genuinely afraid.
Yeah, no, he's pissing his little Jordache jeans.
Yeah, because he cannot answer the question, and I think it's actually having something to do with the anatomy of the rabbits, because he's like, well, you put on a great display,
yes,
and you can't answer this question. So Corrigan, clearly broken by these events, he is just right into Stegman's face. He's about to pull the trigger. Norris rushes him. A gunshot goes off. The classroom clears out of all the kids, and he tries to console his best
and
he can.
They get the gun away from him.
Yeah, they get the gun from him. He tries to console him as best he can. Morgenthau states he needs to go see a professional, like he needs to be taken to a hospital right now. And Norris is like, no, let me drive him home. Corrigan says nope, and he refuses. And later that night, we see him driving downtown, also having more to drink behind the wheel of his car, as he catches sight of Stegman's gang coming out of the punk bar, and he decides to pursue them in a very intense scene right now.
Yes. This is kind of the, like, this is where the film kind of reaches the peak.
Yeah.
And then when I say goes downhill, I mean, like, everything escalates so much faster. Like, they've been pushing a boulder up a hill of like violence and freaking out.
This is basically the hold my beer moment.
And then once they get to that top, everything begins to go insane from this moment on.
So he ambushes Stegman at his car, and he crashes into a car, stalling his car. Stegman and his gang hop on the car, and they're like, you motherfucker, like, we're gonna kick you. He's trying to kill you. They're trying.
I was gonna give you that one.
Yeah. He's trying to start the car. He finally gets it started. Stegman's on top of the car now.
Yeah, he's on the hood.
Yeah, on the hood. So he starts driving. Stegman flies off. McDowall loses control of the car, ramps off of another car. The car flips and then blows up, killing Corrigan.
Yeah, it blows up and then it catches fire, then really explodes. And these fucking punks start gathering around the car, going like putting their hands out, like to warm their hands. They're like,
well, and you can see Stegman. Stegman's off to the side, and he just has this look like now it's on.
Yeah, no, like, it's bad. So before we go further, though.
Yes, because we are getting close to the end.
Yes, of course. We talked about this off air a little bit. I had technically 2 teachers snap.
Jeez.
One was really bad, though, when I was in school. Okay. I went to a little bit rougher school than you did.
Yeah.
I went to a school that was straight up like one of the poorest suburbs. And then also kids were bussed in from downtown. Yeah. Which caused a lot of trouble, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what was your high school? Did you have much in that?
No,
that's okay.
Really,
I mean, you shouldn't. You shouldn't.
Troy really didn't have.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. No, I'm about to tell you stuff. I'm not even going to name the school because I don't want trouble.
That's fair.
But basically, one time I saw a gym teacher freak out, and he broke a bowling pin on the ground and then stomped off, and we didn't see him for the rest of the year.
Fuck. Okay.
There was another teacher who he had been needled and bullied and needled by these kids, and he was probably like a 50-year-old guy.
Yeah.
And finally, he told the kid to just shut up and get out, and the kid punched him in the face.
Jesus.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And he didn't attack the kid back, but he ended up having to go on administrative leave. There was a lawsuit, from what I understand, or something, or there was definitely a settlement of some kind.
Yeah. And
then when he came back, I had one of his, it's been so long since I was in school. There are these classes that aren't really classes. They're like gap classes or something. He was a teacher in one of those because that's where you don't really teach anything. And this is actually funny and not sad. He had the most I can't be fired attitude. He would talk with us and he'd make jokes.
Yeah.
And if you were pleasant to him, he was incredibly pleasant.
Yeah.
But I wish I was joking.
Oh my God.
This is I've never told this story.
Go ahead.
So he's doing things, and there are some kids in that class that are troublemakers.
Yeah.
And when they would say something, he would just shrug and be like, I don't care what you think, to those kids. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm not kidding. This really happened. This sounds insane.
Mm-hmm.
After some kids were being rude or whatever, he said, hey, who wants to hear a song? I'm not kidding.
Okay.
And he went off and grabbed, I think it was a, oh man, what are those? Not a ukulele, but the
Mandolin.
Mandolin. It was a mandolin. He pulls out a mandolin and starts strumming a tune. And he had a song. I don't know if he was making it up or if he'd made it up before.
Yeah.
But it was just about like, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but I remember the hook of the chorus because it was so offensive.
Oh God.
I'm so serious. He starts playing this episode. He's like, you live your life and you get married, you get a job and you pay your taxes and you do this and this and this. And it's like all this stuff. He's like, and why do you pay your taxes? And why do you go to work? So some retard can have fun in high school. That's just what he did with the class.
Yeah.
He sang this incredibly mean
Offensive
song.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never told this story before, but it was truly wild. And yeah, I just felt that I should share that one. With you.
The only one that I have that is worth telling is a little sad, but not incredibly sad, just a little sad. We had a teacher in my junior, would have been my junior year of high school. He was a chemistry teacher.
I dropped out my sophomore year.
I know you
punk.
He was a chemistry teacher, and he was a super nice guy and a really good teacher too. But I think he was narcoleptic. Like he would fall asleep at his desk while teaching. Like it was a bit of a problem.
Dave,
mm-hmm.
Your teacher might have been a drug addict.
I mean, there's that possibility too.
Oh man, my computer typing teacher was a cokehead. It was oh my God, he was red. Mm-hmm. And he just sniffed the entire class.
He was a bigger guy, so I don't know what drug it would have been, but regardless,
he might not have been. Yeah. It's just when you said that, I was like, "Have you considered?"
I hadn't until you said that. Yeah, but anyway, one day in particular, he had a class and apparently fell asleep while teaching the class, or like they were like doing study work or whatever. So he was at his desk and he'd fallen asleep, and they got into his cabinet, his science cabinet, and got fireworks.
What?
And proceeded to set a trash can on fire in the commons with them.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard.
The teacher unfortunately got let go because
that teachers union did him dirty.
Yeah.
He should have been fined.
But that was the story I heard, was that he had fallen asleep. They got into his cabinet, got the fireworks, and they set a trash can on fire in the commons. I remember hearing the firework go off in school that day.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because one other thing I want to mention before we move on is, so I would have graduated in 2005.
Yeah.
So I was in middle school when Columbine, the school shooting in Columbine happened.
Yeah.
And that changed everything.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, we weren't allowed to carry backpacks.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't allowed to wear jackets or coats. And we had to carry a ID around our neck.
Jesus.
With a photo ID around our neck wherever we were. If you weren't wearing it, you got in trouble.
Jesus.
And if you came to school and forgot it, you had to go to the office and pay $1 for a temporary one.
Yeah.
And you would literally come into school and it was on a lanyard, it had a barcode, and you would scan it. And that would let them know that you were present to school. And it also was so that people could immediately look at your ID to know you were a student.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, one of the moments that really tells you what high school was like for me. The assistant principal, who I did not know and did not know me, was it seemed like we were troublemakers. We were all like talking and laughing and walking through the hall. And she just went, excuse me, what's your name? And I said, Henrique, because that's how I said it back then.
Yeah.
And she said, let me see your ID.
Are you fucking kidding me?
So I don't have a common name, especially not in Ohio in early 2000s, but like, so I had to show it to her. I'm like, right there.
Yeah.
But you know who they wouldn't have done that to? The Arab students.
Yeah.
Yeah. But because we would try to be kind to their names
sense.
being unusual.
Yeah.
But so
Jesus.
There was a lot of stuff like that. There was a lot of drug dealing going on in my school. There was a lot of serious fights. So I was always amazed when we had the teachers that kept a really good mindset.
Yeah.
At one time, a kid in middle school, I think it was a kid went crazy with a fire extinguisher and started spraying people.
Oh God.
And this female teacher who was very big, famously, as he was walking by, popped her door open and just grabbed him and tackled him.
Holy shit.
Anyway, that's all I got. I don't want to.
I'll give one more story that is actually recent.
Please.
That this has nothing to do with my high school experience, but this is something interesting. Recently, unfortunately, due to the school shooting increase and whatnot, they've installed a lot of panic buttons into schools for lockdown procedures and whatnot. So recently, in my town, we had a teacher that this is a 3D printed button that's on a keyboard, and basically you push it, you type in the code, and it sends out the signal, locks down the school, and everything.
Okay.
So the substitute gets in one morning, apparently.
Oh, Tom Berenger.
And is getting ready to take attendance, so she's logging on, and apparently she taps the button by mistake, not realizing, and thinks that she's just putting her password in to take attendance. So the school immediately goes into lockdown. So that was the first time.
Jesus.
So then they get that all sorted at some point in the day, like probably like 45 minutes later, everything's calmed down. Because like this is in the age of Facebook, keep in mind. So parents are notified because the kids are like, well, the school's on lockdown, so parents are freaking out. It was news all over. I'm sitting at work and like just following it through Facebook, basically. Well, then an hour later, it goes off again.
Oh my God.
Because they had gone to her and been like, okay, well, like, explain to us what happened. And she's like, well, I was doing this and doing this. And she demonstrated by doing it again.
Not the brightest of educators.
Had to be walked out by the police. I do not know if she's even in the system anymore for substitution, but I just thought I would share that because that's a fucking crazy.
Well, and I'll give you one other thing that is poignant because with this revolving door policy and these kids kind of coming and going and being so troublesome and so violent, my school had a zero tolerance policy for certain things. And a kid I knew got to school, put his backpack in his locker, and then all of a sudden realized he had a paintball gun in his bag.
Yeah.
So he locked his locker, went to the office and said, hey, I accidentally brought my paintball gun. It's in my backpack, in my locker, locked.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys want to go get it and whatever, you can call my dad. He can come and get it or something because like, I know that this is not okay.
Yeah. That probably wasn't the best
decision. He got suspended.
Yeah.
And almost expelled.
Yeah.
And I remember because when it happened, all of us kids were like, so never
to tell anybody.
Trust them in any way. Just when in doubt, lie, hide, secrets forever.
There's only a certain amount of teachers that like a handful that I trusted to tell anything to in high school that I knew I was cool with if I had anything like that happen. But I still would have never gone to the office and been like, hey, I have this in my locker. That just does not.
Well, I get that he was afraid he was going to get caught with it.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And the sad thing is, you would think that would have been the way that you wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah,
that you would be like, there's absolutely no threat to anybody. I don't have it on me. Like it's over there. But yeah, it was just like they treated him like a maniac.
I did almost get suspended for a fart machine once.
David, you are a fart machine.
I mean, I am, but so last story, we had finished up our Christmas Carol unit, and the final stage of the Christmas Carol unit was we got to watch George C. Scott's Christmas Carol, which I've seen countless times. Like I grew up with that movie, so I know that movie basically front and backwards.
Right.
And I just so happened to have a fart machine with me that day that I had brought to school because it was a gift I was going to give to my father, but I was showing off to some friends before I had gifted it. And keeping in mind that we were watching A Christmas Carol, I was like, I know all the quiet parts of that movie. So about halfway through, you could see the teacher, the classroom we were in watching the movie was getting a bit annoyed and suspicious of to whom was doing it. And the movie ended. We thought everything was okay. And then we saw this one kid that none of us really liked go up to her. They went out in the hall. And then what do you know? I was called out in the hall about 5 minutes later. And I got sent to the office. Luckily, my family knew. I knew the vice principal even before going to the school. So she was just like, listen, I'm going to take this. You can have it back at the end of the day, and there may be a detention with it. I'm just gonna decide on that. The best thing was when I went to get it at the end of the day, she opened it up and it went off like 3 times as she was opening the drawer, which made her laugh. And I didn't get detention, but I did almost get in a lot of trouble for that.
Must be nice.
Oh, the teacher who caught me, like she was requesting suspension.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And that's when like she looked at the paper and she's like, I'm not going to suspend you, but like you probably are going to have to get some kind of punishment.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, when I got the detention for participating in the walkout, the person who was scheduling it typed my name in 4 times because they kept thinking, no, I'm not joking. They kept thinking they were misspelling it because no priors came up.
Yeah.
And I look like a maniac, but I was just so bored and annoyed in school. I never really did anything other than like try not to fall asleep.
Jesus.
Yeah, who would ever guessed I had ADHD? Anyway, back to the movie.
So the next day, Diane confronts Norris, telling him that she's going to stay with her mother, and is he ready to leave? Because she's had enough of this. It's getting too dangerous now. And Norris tells her that he can handle these kids, unlike Terry. And she goes, well, you know, I don't want you to end up like Terry. That's basically what's going on right now.
Yeah, no shit.
So she worries his fate will be the same, and he tells her, listen, we'll stay for the concert. When the concert ends and the kids have, you know, performed, we will immediately pack up and go to your mother's, and that's the end of this.
Yeah, and
I'm sure it goes well.
You know the phrase, too little, too late.
Norris goes to see Arthur at the hospital, who is awake and talking now, and he asks him, you know, do you know who stabbed him? Like, you told the police you didn't, but I don't believe that. And Arthur's like, you know, if I tell you who it was, they're going to get me as soon as I get out of here. Like, there's no point in me telling you this. It's just, you know, I'm in danger if I tell you this. And that's when Norris is like, you know, well, if you don't help me, somebody else might get hurt.
Yeah.
And so that's when he tells him that Vinny was the one who stabbed him. So we see that Stegman and his gang got arrested, but they've already been released because as Norris is approaching the police station, all 5 of them are leaving, laughing, and of course Stegman catches Norris's eyes. Norris goes into the police station and asks Stewisky, you know, what happened, and he's like, listen, Vinny didn't admit to it. We have nothing to hold them. This is all hearsay. There's no witnesses except for Arthur, but we can't take his testimony because we don't know how coherent he was when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Norris calls his wife, and he tells her that, you know, the concert begins at 8 tonight. Be here. We'll go home immediately after, and we'll get ready to leave. So at school, Stegman confronts Norris and tells him he's got to learn. Life is pain, and pain is everything, and you'll learn. So we cut to Norris's residence as we see that Stegman and his gang have home invaded the residence as Mrs. Norris is getting ready, and the gang ends up sexually assaulting her, all 3 of them, while Patsy takes a Polaroid of it occurring.
It's vile.
Yes.
And then they take her with them.
So at the school, the auditorium begins to fill up. Norris is looking for his wife, of course. The gang loads her into the van, and we see them drive. And Patsy gets to the school first, passes an envelope off to the usher, who passes it off to Norris at the front of the auditorium.
He's getting ready to start the performance as the conductor with his band.
And that's when we see him take out the photo, and he is horrified. He also immediately sprints out into the hallways after her, because I did forget to mention that she goes like this. Right to him. Yeah,
David was making a finger going through a
donut.
A donut.
A hot dog going through a donut.
A little girl in a pink dress.
Damn. So Patsy calls out, come and get it, teacher, come and get it, taunting him, running through the halls as he's in pursuit of her. Norris then is ambushed by the gang. He's sprayed with a fire extinguisher before they begin beating him. Fallon has to pull Barnyard off of him, reminding him that they're going to play some more with him later, and that's when we see that Stegman has Diane with a knife to her throat. Norris gets up and goes back to search for her through the school, and we just watch him kind of wandering the halls. He finally enters the gymnasium, where we see Stegman is up in the rafters with Diane, and we also see that the rest of Stegman's gang are up there as they swing in from ropes and knock him to the ground once again.
And business is about to pick up.
Business is really about to pick up because the gang proceed up into the rafters with Diane. Norris, still in pursuit, is taunted again by Patsy, but the auditorium is also getting antsy at this point, and so Deneen decides that she's going to fill in and conduct the show for him. So the show begins as we cut back to Norris, who is now in the wood shop trying to arm himself as he finds a pry bar.
And now is when the film goes Charles Bronson.
So he hides in the back of the shop as Fallon enters armed with a thing of chains. They get into a scuffle for a little bit, throwing each other through the desk and the chairs. Finally, Fallon grabs Norris and throws him onto a table saw, kicking the saw on. He's trying to push him onto it. That's when Norris gets the upper hand, throwing Fallon onto it and severing his arm right at the fucking elbow.
And as he gets up and tries to escape, or maybe attack him back, we don't really know.
Lunges at him.
He throws him right down on it, right into his spine.
Yep.
Killing that Mother Hubbard.
So Fallon is now dead, and that's when the rest of the gang, Barnyard, Drugstore, and Patsy, find his body, and Drugstore states that he's going to cut Norris's heart out. So now we see that Norris is in the auto shop. He's poured gasoline on the floor. He backs up a little bit, and arms himself with a blowtorch, and he kicks that on as well. As they enter, Drugstore enters, and Norris threatens to set him ablaze, asking him where his wife is, and that's when Drugstore decides to take the moment to say, your wife was so easy.
Yeah, that's what you want to say.
So Norris puts the blowtorch to the ground, lighting the gasoline, and we watch Drugstore go up in flames.
And when we come back to after he's been burnt, he is crispy indeed.
So that's when Barnyard and Patsy enter the auto shop, and Barnyard charges at Norris, and that's when they have into a fight. Patsy's screaming him on. Norris is getting several whacks into Barnyard's skull with a wrench, which takes him down. Patsy then decides to get into a car in the auto shop, driving right towards him, but missing him, plowing right over Barnyard and onto a lift that drops a car onto her, basically killing her.
Yeah, smashing her.
Yeah, smashing her. In her last breath, she tells him that Stegman has Diane on the roof of the school.
So now we're headed to the climactic rooftop fight.
So now Norris gets to the roof. Stegman holds a blade on Diane, and he tells him it's too late. You know, we're all going to go together. So he slices Diane right above her breast. Norris charges at him, knocking the blade from his hand, throwing several punches at him to the ground. Stegman stands up right as Norris gets one last punch in, sending him through the window as he clutches onto some
skylight.
The skylight.
Yeah.
So he's clutching onto cables right after hitting through the skylight. And that's when we see Stegman once again, like, please, Mr. Norris, don't let me die. Like begging for his life. I'm just a kid. So Norris offers his hand stupidly. He's like, give me your hand. And that's when Stegman goes to cut him. Norris basically says, fuck you, and punches him, sending him through the other skylight into the auditorium as he's hung right before the entire crowd.
The rope somehow catches his throat, and he is just hung, which right as the band is finishing the song, and all I could think was, well, they're never going to top that.
No. So he crashes through. He is hung to death right in front of everyone, of course, who screams. We see Stegman and his wife on the roof as they're clutching each other, and that's when the movie ends with a title card that says, Norris was not prosecuted because there were no witnesses.
And there were no witnesses to what happened.
No witnesses to what happened, and that, my friends, is Class of 1984 from 82.
It sure as hell is, and I want to say something. I've thought a lot about these vigilante style movies.
Yeah.
Because, obviously this film, all the Bronson stuff that was coming out.
Yeah.
You got to remember that the 70s, especially the 60s and 70s, were a very violent time in American history.
It very was.
And it very was.
Very was.
It was a very violent time. There were acts of terrorism regularly committed on American soil. There was violence in the streets. This is an era where a man shot some teenagers on a subway who were threatening him, or at least reportedly were threatening him.
Yeah.
And the people of New York, including one of the parents of the kids who got shot, now they didn't all die.
No.
I don't think any of them died, actually. I think, but one was crippled for life.
One was crippled.
But the mother was even like, they deserved it.
Yeah.
And the reason he had a gun was he had been mugged several times.
Yeah.
But the people of New York were like, hell yeah, because they were so tired of being victimized.
Yeah.
By that, this was before it got all cleaned up and wasn't so bad. But I mean, any city where the sewers fill with toxic waste at midnight every night,
Well, this is also, I think, the same. I feel like 82 is the year the Killing of America comes out.
It might have been
around that time. Yeah. So I mean, a very violent time.
It was, and it was right before things were going to cool down a lot in the 90s. So my point is that the vigilante fantasy was something a lot of people could identify with. This idea that there are these untouchable people, the police won't do anything, somebody does something.
Yeah.
And it made for some really fascinating 80s action movies and crazy stories being told.
Well, you want to know what I love about this one on this recent watch that I never caught before? Nary a single gun.
Yeah, it's very, very
Except
rare.
for the one that Roddy McDowall uses.
Which would make sense, though. I mean, it'd be hard for those kids to get guns anyway.
So, would you like to know what the budget was?
I would love to.
$3 million is the estimation.
Okay.
In box office, it takes in $2,161,000, and it comes out August 20th in 1982.
Damn, I didn't know it flopped.
It flopped, yeah.
For being such a ridiculous, violent movie, you'd think it would have a big audience. But I think it was a little too dark.
So it was shot in Toronto, Ontario in 45 days.
It's a good schedule. Yeah.
Central Technical School was used as Lincoln High. Mark L. Lester said the film was inspired by several true stories of school violence he had read about in papers. In particular was a story of a teacher who brought a gun to class to control his students. The scene ended up in the film.
Oh, wow. Shit.
Mark Lester said the movie came about because his love of the movie Blackboard Jungle. He thought, what if you did a film like that today with gangs and guns in school? Back then, you would read about a kid who took a gun to school somewhere, and I projected that out. In the beginning of the film, there's a warning that if we don't take note of this violence in schools, it's going to get worse and worse.
Yeah, well, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But violence in schools and gang violence and shootings in schools versus the kind of prototypical school shooting that people think of these days.
Yeah.
They're very different.
Very different.
But the gang violence element is far more rampant, far more dangerous, and far more ignored.
Yeah.
Just, that's all I'm going to say.
No, I could get that, yes. In one of his early roles, Michael J. Fox was still being billed as Michael Fox. Registration problems with the Screen Actors Guild would later prompt him to add the middle initial J to his stage name.
That happens a lot.
Timothy Van Patten wrote the concerto that Stegman plays.
Oh, well, sounded great.
Director Mark Lester calls this his best film.
That's saying something, because he did a lot of great films.
Yeah. Due to the film's violent content and full frontal nudity, Lester had a difficult time getting a U.S. distributor for the film. Through numerous overseas distributors, bought the film and made it quite successful abroad.
I do believe, violent action movies, especially back then, were just huge overseas.
Oh, yeah. Mark Lester cited A Clockwork Orange as the film's biggest influence.
I could see that, too.
Yep. Nearly every shot of Timothy Van Patten is done from a low angle to make him more threatening. And it's the only time it's not is the couch.
You're completely right. Yeah.
Excuse me, I just read that. According to Mark Lester, Perry King was first and only actor considered for the role of Andrew Norris.
Wow. Well, he did a great job, so I could see that.
The punk kids at the club were actual slam dancers called in for the film. Shooting of the scene got quite out of hand, though, as the crowd got rowdy and some of the actors and actresses were hurt during filming. Lisa Langelies, who played punk girl Patsy, said the actors were very nervous. The punk rockers that were hired to be extras, they weren't really extras, they were punks. For me personally, they knew I wasn't a real punk rocker. I had my hair purple, pink, and some other colors, so they knew I was an actor. Not one of them didn't appreciate me wearing a dress. Several times I had punk rocker women come up to me and say, "We're gonna get you." Mark Lester really wanted reality, but I wanted to in reality. You won't notice this in the movie, but whenever there were big scenes in the club or whatever, you wouldn't see me because I would literally disappear. I was afraid when they were slamming people. They were actually doing it. It was for real. They were really hitting each other. The punk extras got off on it, and it wasn't well thought out for the actors. It wasn't taking care of us. I was afraid because I knew there was no protection on the set.
Well, and the funniest part about that is you barely see the punk kids dance either, and they went to all that trouble and had all that trouble.
Yeah. Detective Stewiski's dialogue to Norris was taken word for word from a real life police officer heard while Mark Lester was doing research for the film.
Jesus.
Much of the graffiti art director Jeffrey Holmes put on the walls of the school for the filming was extremely difficult to remove. It caused some trouble when real-life students of the high school used in the film returned to see all the profanity left on the walls. Ultimately, it was removed.
Hey, they got to learn somehow.
Some theaters showed a film on a double bill with Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior.
Okay. Wow. Dark and then dark.
Yeah. The police station was also used in Black Christmas. According to actor Stefan Angram, who portrayed Drugstore, the graffiti-covered shirt he wears when Corrigan puts the barrel of the handgun into Drugstore's face was actually a graffitied work of art by co-star Timothy Van Patten.
Oh, well.
Upset at the violence content after a screening, screenwriter Barry Snyder had his name taken off the credits.
It's pretty intense topics.
Yeah.
It's minors or...
Juveniles,
they would have to be minors, or else the cops would have been involved right away.
Yeah.
So,
when originally released in the United Kingdom, the theatrical version received 4 minutes and 14 seconds of cuts from the British Board of Film Classification and was refused video certificate 4 years later. It was finally passed uncut in 2005.
Yeah, the Brits, they hold on to their censorship.
Yeah. This was Helena Quinton's first and only film. She was so upset after being pressured into stripping totally naked in a room full of people for one scene that she quit acting.
If there's one reason to quit, it would be that.
Critic Roger Ebert said it was the best film he saw at Cannes Film Festival in 1982.
I believe he would like that movie.
Oh, yeah. All the teen extras were handpicked for their inner city appearances.
Okay.
The film spawned 2 sci-fi themed sequels. They were loosely based on the original Class of 1999 and 1990 and the direct-to-video follow-up Class of 1999 2, The Substitute. The first of which was also directed by Lester and, like its predecessor, was also released via Vestron Video, while the latter was released by Vidmark Entertainment.
Hell yeah.
Director of photography Albert J. Junk was hired by Mark Lester after Lester saw his work in The Incubus. Mark Lester told Dread Central in 2015 he was working on a remake. He already had the script and it would be a more modernized version of the story. Of course, it never came to fruition, unfortunately. Lester felt the scenes where Corrigan holds the class at gunpoint was so pivotal to the film, he set aside 2 days to film that scene alone. Lester says it remains his favorite scene in the film.
I really think that every scene in the film made sense and was necessary, so I agree.
The MPAA's rating board threatened the original cut of the film with an X rating, so it had to be cut down. The rape scene and the table saw death scene in particular had to be edited for an R rating. Real dead animals were used for the scene where the school finds Corrigan's lab animals killed. The smell of the room in which they were placed was so overwhelming that most of the actors and actresses wouldn't enter the room.
Yeah, it looked real. So.
Yeah. Roddy McDowall drove the car in the scene where Corrigan goes crazy and attempts to run down Stegman's gang. The camera was mounted on the hood as McDowall drove the vehicle crazily down the street.
Jesus. I mean, fuck.
The only
scary,
set, yeah,
man.
I know. The only set built for the film was the auto shop where Norris fights Barnyard in the finale. The rest of the film was all shot on location.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
a big school.
In the final scene where Stegman is hanging on the rope above the orchestra, he says he will change his ways and Andy offers his hand. In one version, Stegman looks to cut himself loose from Norris and falls. However, during a screening, a distributor wanted to see Stegman get his comeuppance. So after the screening, Lester and Perry King did a quick shot of Norris reacting to Stegman's bold move with King, looking back in disgust and punching at the camera.
That's a bit on the nose.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Lisa Langelis said she and the other actors were embarrassed to be in the film. They thought it was awful, and she was shocked when it ended up being a big hit. Her boyfriend was in Paris and told her he saw this huge floor-to-ceiling poster of her with bigger breasts, and the artist had given her. Her mother said it was the quintessential moment for her when she knew her daughter had done a good job as the actress because she was in the theater watching it, and when Langelis got killed at the end, the audience got up and cheered. It was a real memorable moment for her.
Aw, wholesome content.
So what are your final thoughts on Class of 1984?
Well, that's definitely a rent it. I mean, you got to see this movie to believe it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth watching if you're a 1980s movie fan, if you're a gritty drama fan, and just if only for Roddy McDowall's parts.
Oh, yeah.
You could think everything else is overdone or poorly done or offensive, but McDowall brings so much reality to his suffering character
Humanity.
that it's not fun to watch.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is.
What about you, D?
Rent it for me as well. This is one of those quintessential 80s movies that, like Enrique said, you just have to see to believe it. It's at that period where horror is teetering off of slasher, but they are still doing slasher moments in movies like this.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Yeah.
But more than anything, it's just an absolute blast. It is completely insane and one of the best like sieges at a school film that I could think of.
Yeah, I mean there are a few.
Yeah.
But no, this one's really good.
Yeah. So recommendations, we always like to end the show with a couple. I've got two this week, starting off with Class of 1999 from 1990. 3 ex-military robots are reprogrammed as teachers and secretly placed in a school where most students are part of organized gangs. They begin to respond violently to unruly students, and their military training starts to take over. That movie is so out of its mind.
It's completely wackadoo.
And then my second recommendation, I'm going to go with one that you and I discovered, and I really need to revisit. It's been a bit. The New Kids from 1985. Newly orphaned siblings Abby and Lauren McWilliams arrive in a small Florida town to help their Aunt Faye and Uncle Charlie run a family-owned amusement park. They find out that the town is terrorized by a local street gang. If you ever want to see a psycho James Spader, this is that movie.
And my lord, it was directed by Sean S. Cunningham,
Yes,
right?
it
The
is.
director of Friday the 13th.
Yes, it is.
That movie is so out of its mind.
Yeah.
The action is incredible, insane, and it just keeps going.
Much like the New Kids, with the New Kids, it's much like Class 84, where it's worth the watch alone for the last 20 minutes.
Oh my god.
That freaking
That movie-
amusement park? My god, dude.
I bought it on Blu-ray immediately.
Damn right you did, yeah. We are also, would you like to know what we're going to talk about next week, by the way?
Sure.
Well, we're wrapping up Back to School, Back in Action. That's what I'm calling it now. With The Last Boy Scout from 1991. Now, you may be thinking, well, what's that got to do with school? Boy Scout, deal with it.
Well, and we're showing that because we got a request from our good buddy
recommendation,
Trank.
yeah. Yep.
Trank, who wrote in, who, by the way, I wanted to talk about our emails, but Dave's in such a hurry.
I'm not in a hurry. I knew we'd do the emails. Calm down.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe. But we do have 2 emails sitting in here.
Go ahead.
So the first one is from Daniel Moy, or Moye. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right or not. But he says, well, first, the subject is Happy Birthday.
Birthday.
Which I can appreciate.
That's awesome.
And if you want to email us, by the way, you can get a hold of us at doyouevenmoviepod@gmail.com or go to doyouevenmovie.com to find all the information about what we do. He says here, since I'm making this email on September 10th, my birthday, I'm going to start with a very happy birthday to our wise leader. I didn't write
Lifestyle
this.
coach.
Our lifestyle coach, life coach. Happy birthday, Henrique Couto. I find it a little funny how I'm exactly a month and 2 days older than you, and we both happen to be Ohioans. Just throwing it out there, but if I ever see any of you guys out in the world, regardless of where it may be, This could turn really quick.
It really could.
I'll probably fanboy out seeing one or both of my favorite podcasters. Thanks to you guys, I've been able to discover some movies I've never seen or rediscovered. I've seen every movie on this podcast, all the ones that are readily available.
Makes sense.
I was a little disappointed to find Toy Soldiers, and that I couldn't find it readily.
I gotcha.
Readily available since it's one I haven't seen. Instead of taking all this time to tell you how much I enjoy both Mr. Kuto's podcasts, which I very much do, I'm going to get to the point of this email. I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Now I'm going to warn you, suggestions may take a while because we've got Halloween.
We've got holidays coming up.
And then we've got Thanksgiving, and then we've got Christmas, but we will put it down.
Yes.
Let's see. I'm going to suggestion. I know Mr. Kuto has seen it since he's talked about it on his June monthly spooky, Ready or Not.
I do love Ready or Not.
We'll do that in January.
Yeah,
we will.
I'll be down.
That will be in January. It'll be a little bit of wait, but it'll be worth it. That's a great movie, Ready or Not. Love this movie, and I honestly can't wait to hear you guys review it, but it's great. You keep putting out the podcast, I'll keep listening. P.S. Thanks for the help to figure out the movie I've been thinking of. Freaked. Okay,
Yep.
good. I'm glad we could help you with that.
Awesome.
So thank you, Daniel. We really appreciate all the kind words very, very much.
And if you're a fan of Ready or Not, if you have not seen Abigail yet, the director's newest movie, so much fun.
It's on Peacock, right?
Yeah, it's on Peacock right now.
And this one's from our good buddy Trank.
Awesome.
Trank Garza. It says, happy birthday. Hi, Henrique. Wanted to say happy birthday. I really enjoyed the episode and your stories. Way to have a 250-pound Marine misty-eyed over a diesel engine. Thanks for what you do, Trank.
That's awesome.
That makes me feel really good because I definitely opened it up wide on that show, and I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. So on that note, we want to remind you, go to doyouevenmovie.com for all the information about the show. You can find us on Instagram at doyouevenmoviepod, right? Or is it do you? Okay. I always forget.
Do you move pod.
And you can email us at doyouevenmoviepod@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. We'll be back here next Tuesday talking all about The Last Boy Scout. And remember, in October, we're doing 5 Halloween horror films as a crossover show between Weekly Spooky, my other podcast, and Do You Even Movie? So remember to subscribe if you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a comment. It really does help. And if you want to find out our Patreon, that's up to you. It's at our website, doyouevenmovie.com. So we will see you next Tuesday, my friends. Until then, don't go back to school.
I am the future.
Adios.